The recent tariff pause announced by the administration has created a complex market response worldwide, with Asian markets surging while U.S. futures declined. This economic roller coaster reflects deeper concerns about trade policy direction and congressional authority. Market reactions show global disconnect. Easter announcement temporarily suspending new tariffs was met with mixed reactions across global financial markets. Overnight, Japan's Nikkei index jumped 9% and European markets rose 5.7%, showing immediate relief. However, S&P 500 futures fell 1.74% and Dow futures dropped 1.38%, highlighting American investors' ongoing concerns about U.S.-China economic interdependence. Economic analysts point out that while the 90-day pause provides temporary relief, it extends a period of market uncertainty. The 10% tariffs remain in place, and trillions in market value have already evaporated since early April when the tariff threats first emerged. You can call this a relief, but we're facing another 90 days of uncertainty, noted one prominent financial analyst yesterday. The 10% tariffs haven't disappeared, and we're still significantly down from where markets stood in early April. Conservative voices question executive authority. Several prominent conservative voices criticized the tariff implementation process. One writer argued that Congress should reclaim its constitutional tariff authority, while another noted, "What is arbitrarily revoked can be arbitrarily invoked again." This underscores concerns about executive overreach in trade policy. Last week, the Senate passed legislation to terminate new tariffs on Canada by a narrow 51-48 vote, with 4 Republicans joining Democrats. The bill seeks to reverse the emergency powers declaration used to justify the tariffs and now moves to the House for consideration. A bipartisan effort is also underway, with 7 Republicans and 7 Democrats supporting legislation that would give Congress oversight authority on tariff implementation. This represents growing pushback against the executive branch's unilateral trade actions. Economic impact reaches Main Street. Critics argue that the current approach creates unnecessary economic volatility. Despite yesterday's policy adjustment, markets remain unsettled as investors navigate what one senator called chaos and confusion, while everyday Americans continue facing higher prices. They must choose between stockpiling inventory to hedge against future tariff increases or investing in growth, all while operating on tight margins. For a small brewery dealing with aluminum costs, these across-the-board tariffs create impossible choices, explained one Midwestern senator. Unlike major corporations, these business owners often have their houses mortgaged to keep operations running. For consumers, the impact is tangible. Families could face what opponents call a tariff tax, potentially adding $1,000 annually to household expenses. This comes at a time when many Americans are already struggling with grocery prices and retirement account performance. Constitutional questions intensify. The situation highlights fundamental questions about constitutional separation of powers. Critics from both sides of the political spectrum argue that Congress has ceded too much authority to the executive branch on trade policy, creating a system where presidential edicts can dramatically impact the economy without legislative input. We're witnessing a president sign documents at his desk and present them as commands to be followed, rather than engaging with the legislative process established by our Constitution, remarked one political observer. Some lawmakers express frustration that their colleagues seem more concerned about potential political repercussions than fulfilling their constitutional responsibilities. This dynamic has allowed unilateral trade actions to proceed despite bipartisan recognition of their economic risks. Farmers face particular challenges as agricultural communities face specific concerns about the tariff situation. Farmers operating on thin profit margins worry about fertilizer costs and potential export market disruptions, all while dealing with other challenges like avian influenza outbreaks and rising input costs. These tariffs introduce another layer of unpredictability for agricultural producers already navigating difficult market conditions and weather-related uncertainties. Looking forward as the situation unfolds, the focus remains on whether Congress will reassert its authority over trade policy or continue allowing the executive branch to set tariffs independently. The outcome will have significant implications for American businesses, consumers, and international trade relationships. Some legislators advocate addressing more fundamental economic challenges instead of engaging in trade conflicts. They suggest focusing on healthcare costs, housing affordability, childcare access, and debt reduction through targeted tax reforms rather than policies that potentially add to economic instability. The coming weeks will prove critical as markets digest these developments and policymakers determine their responses to to this significant trade policy implementation.